Hello, hello, wherever you are in the world. My name is Agnes van Rhijn. I'm a life and business reinvention mentor at Success on Your Own Terms, and I am the founder of the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show. Today, it is my privilege to be interviewing Johanna Lynn. Johanna's work is about freedom. She helps her clients open previously closed doors so that they gain freedom in all aspects of their lives. The one thing we all have in common, she says, is that we all come from a family. We have been influenced by our family far more than we've previously understood. Yet, there is a way forward that allows us to be free. Johanna's work with her clients uncovers the precise family patterns that are limiting their health, relationships, and success. Johanna, welcome to the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm great today.
So, Johanna, tell us about your story, because I don't know your story. Yes. You're one of the rare people that I'm interviewing that I didn't know before. So I'm really curious to be listening to your story. Tell us about it.
Wonderful. Well, it started off 20 years ago. I can hardly imagine that it was that long ago when I started on my own path of really finding what lights me up. And I was so attracted to the way you describe the success on your own terms, because that's always been what I've been drawn towards. Finding work that was meaningful to me and made a lot of sense to me. So I started off as a massage therapist all those years ago. And I really understood, once people got onto my table, how much their body, the neck tension, the lower back pain, was really more about the job they were wanting to leave, but was mustering up the courage to do so, or the challenges in their marriage, that sort of all the issues that we have in our lives end up in the tissues of our body. That really naturally led me into further studies of sort of this mind-body connection. And things really started to gain some traction for me when I followed what really lit me up. So this formal studies of clinical hypnotherapy was what came next. I'd always been fascinated by, why we do what we do, why certain habits are so difficult to escape from, why we choose the relationships that we do. All of those things just felt so fascinating to me. So the formal studies were years long, and I'm still reading about it. It's still an area of interest for me. I was so lucky, I suppose, or as fate would have it, I found my way to the Seeker Center for Integrative Medicine and worked alongside two brilliant physicians for a number of years, and was a part of cases that were so complex, so multifaceted, with their health situation, along with their family dynamics. And as the saying goes, I found myself in the deep end thinking, I need a few more tools here. These are really complicated work. And I found my way to a body of work called the Family Constellations approach. It's been in across the world for over 40 years. And there's over 60 books written on sort of how we carry our family in our body, in the DNA, in our beliefs, and our perceptions. And this allowed me to return back to this position, offering much better outcomes for my clients, but also, coming back into my own life and understanding where I get stuck in my own family relationships and in my own marriage. It was such a huge gift, and it's been sort of this runaway train since then.
Interesting, because when I was reading your biography, I had not made the connection with family constellations, and I don't know that much about it, but I have one of my cousins in the Netherlands who is a coach and who works a lot with family constellations. And I know that when I read her Facebook posts, etc., apparently it is a very powerful work.
It really is, and it's so much more popular, if you will, throughout Germany, throughout Latin America, and here for me in North America, it's really still gaining traction. This whole idea of intergenerational influences and how, if we might be stuck in our lives or have reoccurring patterns in our business or in our most important relationships, we rarely think, I wonder what this has to do with my family of origin behind me.
Yeah.
Or how my parents might have struggled, or my grandparents for that matter. And so a lot of times it can be shining a light on these sort of hidden dynamics that we're really not trained to look at.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I discovered one myself, probably not further than 2-3 weeks ago, through an hypnotherapy session. And something that in fact was still impacting me today, that was relating to something that had happened to my grandparents from my mother's side. Very interesting. Yeah. That's
Really
fascinating.
Well, and for me, I get so excited because over the last decade, there's been so much in science, in typical science journals, that are really proving, if you will, what this body of work has seen over the last 40 years. So it's just it's a remarkable time.
Interesting.
Yes, how this impact continues to affect. Sorry.
So before going deeper in that, given we are on the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show, and that we're all about inspiring other women to go after their dreams and potentially reinventing themselves at some point, from what I hear you saying, I do not feel that you had an original dream there that you've been pursuing all your life. It sounds more like some kind of a reinvention at some point. How did it happen for you?
What a great question. I would say the dream, or the larger piece in front of me, was always pulling me towards work of meaning, being of service to others.
Okay.
I think it really made sense. So that was sort of a platform. But I think from my own life experience, coming up against a very painful divorce after a 10-year marriage, and really having to look at, who was I being in that relationship? How did this all come to an end as it did, in a very dramatic way? And then on the heels of that, realizing I'd kind of burnt out my adrenals, and so my hormone balance was off. And so this place around, what do I need for my health and well-being? And so, to be honest with you, my life turned into a little bit of a tailspin, a little bit of sort of undoing came. And then the recognition of, what do I need to change about myself? I think any of us who work with clients on a day-to-day basis, we can't help but notice our own patterns. We're looking at identifying the patterns of our clients, and we bring that back home to yourself.
Absolutely.
And so many of my patterns were about being externally pushed, sort of that go, 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 do, as a way to prove my worth, back into a much more settled place of really honoring who I am as a person. And so I think that's where that reinvention comes in, this place of, who am I really? What things am I naturally good at? What are my, what feels easy? Where's that natural genius that I can sink into? And I think I bring that to my clients today, really sourcing what feels good, what feels easy, and how do we build from that place.
And I can see the passion in your eyes. They're all lightening up when you start talking about it. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
So what would you say, what have you found most challenging in that journey?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it comes back to recognizing that I need to give to myself first before that natural instinct that I have of giving to others. So this whole idea of putting a capital S on self and really filling up before giving out. And I think for this last year, as we're sort of coming into this new year, I often look back at, what were my challenges last year, and, did I make any movement there? And I think for me, the greatest shift for my well-being and for my results as a businesswoman is setting aside time every morning for myself. And I found my sweet spot. The way that I could make that really work was letting that time be really a free-flowing place. So checking in with myself in the morning, what do I need to do today? And some mornings, we've all had them. We're a little more tired. We're a little more, not wanting to greet the day. Maybe it's just a warm cup of tea and an interesting book, and spending that time with myself before reaching out into the world. And other mornings it's a yoga class, or it's a bike ride, or getting out for some fresh air, but really giving myself that permission to give here first before the full day of reaching out.
I love that. I'm a big fan of Miracle Morning, and I absolutely do have my morning routine. And I just came back from France, where I spent holiday, Christmas with my kids and with my family. But the house was so crowded; it was impossible to find that me time. And I've had, 5-6 days where it was just impossible to do it. Yeah. And oh gosh, I really missed it. And when I came back, first thing I did was, implementing that again. It's a need. It's a need. And I do believe that, the work I do is all about putting yourself back at the center of your life, in particular for women who tend to care of others' needs before themselves. And yes, I do believe that we can give so much more to others when we give to ourselves first. Yeah.
Without a doubt. It's been my life experience for sure. Sometimes it's that contrast, as you say, the getting away from it that has you really realize, oh, this is essential. This is a must.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. So other than that, what else?
What else for reinvention? I think for women who are on the cusp of really wanting to have more joy or have more meaning and purpose, from my professional background, is really looking at, are there any intergenerational influences that might be blocking you, that might be giving you a bit of a drag or kind of pulling you back, to begin to notice what are some of the reoccurring patterns in your relationship, in sort of the business trajectory and how things feel there, and really working at that level to determine, is this, as you had found out in your last session, is this something from my grandparents I'm repeating? Is this an imprint from how I was loved in the first few years of my life coming through to be re-experienced?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So obviously I know what you're talking about, but for listeners who may not know what you're talking about, would you mind giving some examples of the type of things that can be impacting your lives like that?
Absolutely. I think maybe even sharing an experience from a client that I'd worked with because sometimes we can understand it best in a story form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love stories.
Yes. I had started working with a client named Carolyn. We worked together for about 6 months. And when she came to me, she really loved what she did. We really had that in common, that she felt, this is the work I'm meant to do. It just lights me up. And so I could really understand where she was coming from. But she seemed to be stuck at about the $2,000, $2,500 a month income level, and was just so stuck, didn't know what to do to make a change. So she'd tell me that she would have nightmares about having to give it all up and to go back to, quote unquote, a regular job to make it all happen.
We never had nightmares like that. Never.
That's it. I think any one of us who have made this grand leap can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
So the work that we started doing together was really all about asking some different questions. And I think that's what I recognize most about what Carolyn said. She was very surprised at how different the questions I was asking than maybe other mentors or other therapists she'd worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. Through our time together, she discovered that she was actually a surprise pregnancy to her newly married parents. Mm-hmm. Her father at that point was self-employed, had been struggling away for several years and trying to make it happen. But now her mom, being newly pregnant, was in this place of, how are all the basics going to come together, and sort of pushed Dad to get that job and to give up his dream. And so what Carolyn remembers is sitting around the family table, and often the complaints he heard from Dad, how stuck he felt, this got a lot of negativity and a lot of really feeling stuck would be the best way to describe it. Mm-hmm. She had always known this, but never put the pieces together of why she felt she was also stuck, that she was doing something she loved, but couldn't quite break that invisible ceiling, if you will. So the work we did together was the integration of how she was maybe connected to her dad's pain. In the work of family constellations, we call it an unconscious loyalty. Mm-hmm. That, believe it or not, children feel that they can never outperform their parents, earn more than them, have more love than them, have an easier life than them. So we cap ourselves, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But you being a mother, and I'm a mother as well, there's this place where, of course, that's not what we would want for our children. We want them to go further and have more and do better at our deepest heart. And so to allow the subconscious part of her, that part that really runs all of our reactions, all of our beliefs, our whole life really, she was able to release so much of that. And after the 6 months of working together, she surpassed even her own, idea of what she was able to create. And what she says is best is she's finally off that self-employed roller coaster. That's the term that she used. Up and down, and there's this consistency. And I think the greater part of that is the trust that comes in. So there's this place of, I've got this, I know exactly what to do next. And that trust builds confidence. And I think, I had followed up with her a couple of months ago, and we had a really nice exchange. And she says the best thing about it is she feels like she's doing this in honor of her dad.
So that's
was
beautiful.
Such an honoring there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clients like that really light me up, that we almost find this invisible component that you can't see that on the surface.
I know.
And it's really what's sort of running the show. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Beautiful story. Mm. So going back to our listeners who may want to go after their dream, or who may want to reinvent themselves, what type of advice would you want to give them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, again, for me, I look back at my sort of 20 years, and there are these real specific turning points where things completely changed. And my most recent turning point was finding out what I call who my soul tribe is. So for years, I only used the family constellation process therapeutically. So really to, unravel an eating disorder, or look at how to fix marriages with these dynamics. But I evolved to using it for this constellation process to step into the energy of who the match of my soul tribe is. So what I mean about that is, who am I destined to work with at the soul level? So the work so many of us do as mentors, therapists, coaches, authors, we're doing really deep and connected work with the clients that we want to work with. Well, for me, it makes perfect sense that we're actually connected at a deeper soul level. And with the family constellation work, there really is no time or space. So we're really connected to the people who are not in our lives yet, who are not in our lives any longer.
Yep.
And when we can tap into that energy, let me give you another example. That in this work, we all come from a family. So I got lost in sort of going back to those client avatar type of exercises. Who do you think you're supposed to work with? Who's your ideal client? And I just found I was running around in circles, thinking my work can really help everyone. But I'm sure your listeners can relate that if we try to talk to everyone through our website or through our articles, we kind of end up talking to nobody.
Exactly.
And so discovering your soul tribe is a session that I work with my clients. It's one of my favorite things to do, to sort of match them with the clients out there in the world that are kind of this irresistible match to what your natural genius is, what you naturally love to do. It just kind of lets all of the details fall away, because you can stay in what you really love to do, what really comes naturally. And a lot of the clients that I work with, I support them in really building a team. I think it's especially important for the feminine to feel supported. So I work with, for example, a VA. The first thing I did was hired some help to help with the family dinners and some cleaning, so that I could really stay in a place of creativity, feeling resourced and supported. Those were some of the big shifts, again, looking back at this last year, of what's happened in this new reinvention of how I feel. Remember how I was talking about, I found that pattern. I was always pushed and sort of internally this place of gotta go, gotta do, gotta be. And now I'm in this really relaxed, resourced, and supported space And my income has never been greater. My fulfillment in my work has never been higher. And this sort of settled, relaxed space in my body, it's something I'm just not willing to part with now that I've got it.
I can imagine. Well, you're obviously preaching to the converted, but if we were to reframe it, we would definitely say that having the clarity of knowing who you are and what's important to you will give you the confidence from there to be who you are and who you're meant to be. And that is what will attract the right clients to you, because they will resonate with who you are.
Absolutely. That authenticity is just so important these days. I think there's always more than enough clients for all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Of what our specialty is. And I think the more we solidly land in that, we're like this beacon of light that attracts that right fit.
So I don't have to ask you, looking at you and listening to you, if your work is a burden or not.
Well, it's a very interesting question, because with a bit of a different perspective, I would say years ago it was.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, because it felt like I think I was coming from this place of proving.
Mm-hmm.
Proving that I could do it, or maybe even proving to my own parents or grandparents that you actually can succeed at doing work. And all the things that I just shared with you, sort of finding that soul tribe and having that resourced support and finding channels to really share my work in a way that's a match for me. All of that has made it fall into this easeful place where, burden just feels like such a foreign word.
Exactly.
It's quite wonderful.
So if I listen to you, what I hear also is that you two are referring to the importance of surrounding you with the right people and finding the resources to have you concentrate on your sweet spot and leave the rest to the others.
That's it. This sort of brilliance of delegation and knowing, where our energy is best plugged in. I think a big secret to the last year in these changes is my own energy management. So this place of, we all only have $100 of energy to spend in a day. And what are we going to invest that in? And for so many of us doing work like you and I, and your listeners as well, is we love to create transformation in the lives of our clients. So if we could spend, 80% of that time in that, how much more satisfied and happy and fulfilled will we be, instead of trying to tinker around with some of the technology or, figure out other things that a VA could help with, or, someone who's wanting to stay at home with young children, that's a real win-win for them too.
Absolutely. In essence, it's all about identifying what drains you. And if the value of your hour is more than the value of the hour of the person you would delegate it to, then definitely you should delegate it, because if it's draining you, it's not good.
That's it, because I think you bring a very good point that if we feel drained, let's say we've got to get a newsletter out and we don't really like writing, or the technology of that sort of drains us, and then we go into an important client meeting. Our clients, because we're working with their lives and these sort of deep sacred pieces, they're going to feel, if we're drained or we're frustrated. And so there's a bit of an incongruency that shows up. So for me, it's really about remaining in the highest service to my client, but also this commitment, not to deplete myself.
That is a key, absolutely. Any other tip you would want to share with the listeners?
Well, I think we spoke a lot about this morning ritual that feels really good, like we're filling up our cup. But I've noticed, I've been a student, actually, it's actually been this past year, of something called conscious connected breath work. He's a teacher from Montreal that comes down to where I live in Ottawa. And it's quite amazing what you're able to clear through your breath. So I've just noticed, if I'm in a really difficult client conversation, or the intensity of what the client is bringing feels, really intense, to just stay into my body, stay with my breath. Even simple things like when you're at a stoplight, or when you've got your hands in a sink of warm water and you're doing some dishes. How do you connect with your breath? How do you really solidly stay with, what's moving, so that you can stay connected, and so that the emotions of the day don't tend to build up and overtake you? Think of your breath as a way to really release that charge, release that buildup, and remain in this calm, confident space.
Which in essence means that it is about being in the moment, being in the present, because obviously otherwise you cannot connect to your breath. But
That's exactly right.
yeah, breath is really important. But I had never heard of that specific technique. I will investigate it.
Yes, he's an author from South Africa, I believe. My goodness, Michael Brown. I hope I'm remembering that right. Yes, but if you look up conscious connected breath work, I'm sure. Yes.
Will do. So I am getting conscious of time, of course. So before I forget, I would love you to tell us where people can find you, and would you love to connect with most?
Yes, thank you. So my website is www.johannalynn.ca. And you can also find me on Facebook and through social media under my first name, Johanna Lynn. I love to post articles about the intergenerational influences, on really going after what's most important for you. And I would love to offer to any of your listeners that felt like they resonated with what I shared, a free call to just connect and really find out what might be missing, what might be some of those invisible dynamics. I've got a real special ear for language patterns, and often how we describe the challenge that we're up against leads us right to the root of what that piece is that can open up, like it did for Carolyn, the client that I shared about. So I'm happy to spend an hour and on a telephone or on Skype and really get to the root of what that is, so that your listeners can get to that right next step.
So who would you say you would recommend your work to most?
Okay. Well, I really love working with the holistic entrepreneur. You'd said earlier, you're speaking to the converted, that place where we're already on the same page. So naturopathic physicians, chiropractors, coaches, mentors, real specialists in the world of transformation, whether that's physically, emotionally. And then any of those who feel like they're up against repetitive patterns. I almost feel a little bit like the female Sherlock Holmes, the investigator in and finds out what are those missing pieces. Because I think there's nothing more painful than we find ourselves in a fresh new relationship, and after a few months goes by, this just ends up feeling like the same thing. Or some of those painful pieces, we get so far along in our business, and that slide or that frustration or that traction comes in. So those types of things really light me up.
Great. Johanna, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. And so when the listeners will be listening to your show, it will be the 5th of January, meaning that we will be in the new year. So I want to wish a very happy new year to all our listeners, to you included. I really hope that this year you will be going all after your dreams, that you will make whatever you wanted for yourself a reality. You can do it. It is never too late to reinvent your life or to go after your dreams. I know everything about it. And so if you too want to reinvent your life or go after your dreams, I am also offering a complimentary 1-hour session to help you discover what it is you're after and start road mapping what your options are. And you can do so by contacting me on www.anyesvanrhijn.com, and that is ANYESVANRHIJN. And Johanna, given today is the 31st of December, the day we are recording this interview, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful New Year's Eve and all the best for next year. And I really look forward to talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.